Greetings, growth development oriented people. What's up, and welcome back to the Relationship School's Smart Couple podcast. I'm Jayson Gaddis, I'm your host, and we are about to rock episode 160. If you're new here, welcome. We are all about growing through partnership. This podcast is all about long-term relationship and how to succeed, because it's hard to do. And this podcast is about facing yourself and your stuff and using the best tools that are out there to try to work through blocks, challenges, beliefs so that you can have a great marriage or a great long-term relationship. As always, I'm grateful to be your guide and your host today. And I just really appreciate you, the listener, for being the kind of person that's willing to learn. It requires a lot of humility, right? To learn something maybe you judge yourself as not great at or feeling insecure around. And that triggers most of us in a long-term relationship. We think we should know how, we should be better, we shouldn't freak out, we shouldn't react the way we do, we should feel more, have more sex, we should feel sexier, we should feel more connected. Like there's all kinds of shoulds going on about how our marriage or our partnership should go. And this podcast sometimes probably adds to that pile because I'm of the belief that you can indeed have a super inspiring, wonderful partnership over many, many years. And to do that, you got to learn how. So it's reasonable to think you could beat yourself up because you're not learning how, for example, right? And I encourage you to step over that victim in yourself and take full responsibility for getting what you want and not leave it to chance, not leave it to your partner, not leave it to someone else so that the locus of control is outside yourself. So we're big on personal responsibility here. As you know, the Relationship School is underway, yet there's still a chance to join, okay? There's tonight at midnight closes the Embracing Conflict weekend. So the deadline for that is tonight. You will no longer be able to join the Embracing Conflict weekend with dozens of other people here in Boulder, Colorado, the September 29th through October 1st. Hopefully you can come next year or next time, right? And then the 9-month training has already begun. The apprentice training where we train you to be a relationship coach, that's also already begun and is full. So there's no chance getting in on that action. However, the way to still be involved in the Relationship School is to join the Relationship School Roots community. Okay, for $30 a month if paid annually, you can belong, build, connect, and grow your relationship potential with other like-hearted and like-minded people who are also into growth and development, who also want a great relationship and are willing to work for it. So the step up and the step in from the podcast is to take what you're learning here and commit to regular training every couple of weeks where you practice every couple of weeks with one of our certified relationship coaches and where I am there as well at times supporting you getting what you want, okay? But we all know by now, if I've said it enough, hopefully I have, that practice, learning and practice are going to help you get what you want. So it's not enough to just listen to the podcast and hope it gets better. You need to apply, you need to do the action steps, and then what's going to have you go to the next level even more is a financial commitment of some kind, right? When you put some skin in the game, it ups the ante considerably, and you're less likely to wiggle out and get distracted on focus on all the other things in your life. So if you truly want a great relationship, I'm inviting you into the Relationship School Roots community. Go to relationshipschool.net/roots to apply. And we have men and women joining every week, and it is a great group of folks, okay? In this episode, I've got a great guest who wrote a very famous book called Calling in the One. New York Times bestseller for 10 years or more, as well as another New York Times bestseller called Conscious Uncoupling. If you're like, what does that mean? Well, we'll answer that question in this episode. So Katherine Woodward Thomas is my guest. And this episode seems to be all about intention and doing the inner work required to get a great relationship, which is so in alignment with what we talk about here in the podcast, right? So she talks about becoming the person you want to be. So you're going to want to zoom in and rewind this part. We do everything from, she does a guided meditation for you about finding the false self in you that sometimes can run the show, that creates more drama in your life or more distance from the relationships you want. So pay special attention to the guided meditation she offers here. It's just a slice, obviously, of what she really offers in her courses. At the end, you can find out more about her class. She's doing a free class coming up, and you might want to check that out, okay? She talks about her go-to move when triggered. Of course, we talk about conscious uncoupling, and then a practical example of how you could keep reaffirming the story that you're alone. What does that look like? Right? See, we talk about a lot of the negative beliefs, and so much of this episode is about changing the story of who you are, not by the simplistic notion of just, oh, drop your story. You might hear people say that. It's not that simplistic, guys. So Katherine's got, some very practical tips on how to rearrange your story inside your own psyche. And I think it's really powerful. This was a lovely interview. I had a great time with her, and I felt like we really mined some good gold for you. So I hope you enjoy this one. Okay? Okay, aside from her best-selling books, she's also a licensed marriage and family therapist and teacher to thousands of people from all over the world in virtual and in-person learning environments. She was the originator of this conscious uncoupling term, made famous by Gwyneth Paltrow and Chris Martin, okay, when they broke up, if you're following the celebs. Okay, she's also been interviewed by Maria Shriver. She's been interviewed by Lewis Howes on the Summit of Greatness. She's been featured on the Today Show, New York Times, Time Magazine, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, London Times, People Magazine, Women's Health, and on and on. Okay, Alanis Morissette's podcast. Okay, this woman's been around, and she obviously has some great, great stuff to share with you. So let's get right into it. Stay tuned to the end, of course, to your action step, and here is Katherine Woodward Thomas. Welcome to the show, Katherine Woodward Thomas.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Yeah, grateful to have your heart wisdom with us today. So I'm assuming you go by Katherine.
I do.
Okay. Katherine, tell us a little bit about you, and you're I think famously known for the Calling in the One process and book, and conscious uncoupling also. Can you just tell us how, let's rewind the tapes a little bit, on how you got into all of that, like what was happening in your life that led to these insights, and then sharing that with people?
I think I probably have a lot of friends here because I love what you're up to, and that you're all about learning and growing together. If you had asked me when I was in my 20s if I ever could imagine in my wildest dreams that I would be a relationship teacher, I would have laughed at you, because I had so many problems in relationships.
Yeah.
And now we're all so sophisticated. We know about attachment theory and what children need in order to have kind of secure attachment patterns. And of course, I can look back and say, wow, that wasn't happening. Mm-hmm. And we all have our stories about that. And I certainly have mine, because mostly we're raised by the generation before us really didn't have that level of development, and they just didn't know, particularly if parents separated, and how, nasty those, divorces were in the 70s and the 80s. I think in the 80s, the kids in the 80s were the largest generations of latchkey kids ever. So kids who were born in the 80s. So there's probably a lot of us here who were latchkey kids, who we were left kind of alone. And, parenting was about putting dinner on the table and making sure you had shoes to wear to school, getting your homework done.
Which is important.
So, yeah, which is important, which has done me well over the years. But, when I grew up, I had a lot of really dysfunctional patterns. And in particular, because I had a situation where my mother remarried and my father then gave me up for adoption to her new husband.
Hmm.
And that, the way I interpreted that, or what I made that mean, just really set me up for very challenged relationships with men in
I'll bet.
particular.
How old were
So
you when that happened?
what's that? I was 10.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I look back at my dad, and I have a good relationship with him now, but I look back at him now, then, and I think, oh, he just didn't know how valuable he was. We can see
Nice.
it, right, from different eyes as an adult. But as a child, it obviously confused me, and I made it mean something about me, and I didn't have value. So how that played out is a pattern of unavailable lovers, one after the other. So married men or engaged men, alcoholic men, commitment phobic men. I used to joke and say gay men who wanted to explore adored me.
Okay.
It was, I mean, and it looked like it was just happening to me, and I couldn't figure out how it was happening through me. So at some point, and by this time I'm a spiritual practitioner. I had addiction problems, so I'm in the 12-step program, and I start to do transformational work, and I start going into therapy, and I start organizing around my own growth, my own healing,
Hmm.
transformation, to the point where I even became a psychotherapist. But I still had these horrible relationship patterns
Yeah.
that followed. I would, go and counsel couples on how to have a great relationship, and then go home to my little kitty Clover at the end of the day, to my empty apartment. And it was painful.
Mm-hmm.
It was hard. So what happened that really became the beginning of the calling in the one process, because I was not a teacher and an author at this time. I was a therapist. I was a musician. I created a nonprofit that served people who were homeless, and we did creative arts and stuff. But I never, I always wanted to write a book in the background, like so many of us do, but I never thought of that for myself. But what happened is that when I hit 40, I kind of hit bottom with my pattern. And I was working with a group of people who were learning about setting intentions. And kind of in a moment of either insanity or inspired clarity, I called a friend from this group after having my heart bruised yet again. And I said, I'm going to set an intention to be engaged by my 42nd birthday.
Hmm.
I had no prospects for a partner, let alone a wonderful partner. And she said something that really changed my life, Jayson, because she responded by saying, Katherine, if you give me permission to coach you to be the woman that you would need to be in order to be engaged by your 42nd birthday, then I'll hold that intention with you.
Wow.
So instead of running out to find love, I had a different focus. It was to go within and to look at all of the kind of covert and unconscious barriers that I had built against love.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the beginning of the calling in the one process, which is this process of finding love from the inside out and really making conscious that which has been unconscious, and rethinking some of the decisions that we've made, some of the patterns that we run, some of the ideas that we have about our own value or our own power, about our own ability to worthiness to love and be loved.
Yeah.
And so every morning I would sit on a meditation cushion, and I would just ask the universe, what would I need to give up in order to be that version of myself on my birthday? And what would I need to let go of, not let go, what also would I need to begin to cultivate and embrace,
Mm-hmm.
Who I would need to be engaged on my birthday. And I started to live into that. And I think that whenever we sincerely begin to ask life these questions, that a lot of things get set in motion.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And even though I was a spiritual practitioner since the age of 14, I was a licensed therapist. I'd been in 12-step programs for 12 years. I was not a newcomer to personal development.
Yeah.
I suddenly began to see things that I had never seen before about myself as the source of my experience. and they were subtle, and they were pervasive, and they were everywhere.
Oh man, powerful.
Yeah. So the consciousness through which we're trying to connect and the consciousness through which we're creating relationship has become then my path. And just for those who like a happy ending to the story, it was kind of a wild ride because I was doing this every day. And every day I'd wake up, I'd get up from the meditation cushion and I'd have like a new insight or a new action. And I just did them. I didn't second guess myself. If I suddenly had, an impulse uh, to take all the pictures down in my apartment and replace them, all the ones that I had of single women, replace them with couples and families. I would just do it. It was like a game. It's like, oh, I could do that today, and I could do this today. So I was doing external things. I was doing internal things. I think the biggest challenge was noticing how I had this deep-seated belief around not being valuable that I had created when my father left, because I thought he left because I was not valuable. I wasn't
Yeah.
worth
This is
staying.
a really common experience, by the way. Yep. What you know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I had made it mean that, and inside of that perspective, I had been kind of showing up in ways that were training other people not to value me. That
Yeah.
were, like for example, I'd speak in disparaging ways about myself. I would underpresent myself.
Mm-hmm.
I would dress down in situations where I would have needed to dress up. So just like covert signals everywhere. So when I was not sitting there doing the calling in the one process, or what became the calling in the one process, is that the moment I would see that, I would challenge myself to do it exactly the opposite. So I would
Yeah.
dress up, or I would stand up tall, or I would practice how I would introduce myself by actually stating who I am as a powerful, accomplished person
Mm-hmm.
of value and merit in this world. So, and once I did that, what was shocking to me is the whole universe began to shift immediately.
Yeah.
I had a little bit of magic in that one of the mornings when I was sitting on the cushion, I had this vision of this man I had dated 6 years before, who I'd kind of created some drama with because I was dating someone else too. And I'd always thought of him as the one that got away. And I started to feel his presence in the meditation. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm getting this signal to call him. And I didn't want to call him because I behaved badly. So I didn't do it. But I went to a church service a church I'd been going to for 10 years out here in Los Angeles, the Agape Church with Michael Beckwith.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I'd never seen this man. His name is Mark. And lo and behold, there he is across the parking lot. But even then, I had a
Wow.
shy attack, and I did not go say
Didn't say anything.
hello. He left without us connecting. So a dear friend of mine convinced me to get on the internet. Now, internet dating back then, this is like 17 years ago, there were no pictures up. There was no technology for people to put their pictures up.
Uh-huh.
So people just, they identified what city they were in, and that was their city, their race, and they'd have some kind of a hook line, like, two hearts beating as one.
Wow.
And so I got online, I put in my stats. There were 250,000 people on the site. And I got a list of men, and I was reading through, and I only chose one person to respond to. And then my computer froze or something.
Oh,
So it was
interesting.
the only person out of 250. Well, when he wrote me back the next day, it was Mark.
Oh
And
my
he didn't
God.
know me either.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Powerful.
we were engaged a few months later, which was ahead of my birthday deadline, and then married the next year. And then I gave birth to my daughter when I was 43. So
That's
that
so
was,
inspiring.
yeah, I mean, that was the miracle. And I think when we get intentional like that, and we begin to design our life from the future backwards. But what I want to share with everyone here, because I know some people are not yet in relationship and they want to do it differently next time.
Mm-hmm.
And some people are in relationship. And one of the things, now that was, I told you it was a long time ago, that miracle happened. And I wrote Calling in the One a few years later, and it came out, and it's been a national bestseller ever since.
Yep.
And the thing about the calling in the one process and the working with the thousands of people I've had the privilege to work with is that the is that we communicate through a particular lens. Some of us, we call it beliefs.
Hmm.
We call them as kind of cerebral. Oh, I believe I'm all alone in life. But what we don't understand is that when we think that we're all alone in life, we also have a corresponding belief about the other person, which might be the other person's going to leave me.
Yeah.
And so that aspect of that belief, that matrix, which includes a belief about myself and a belief about how others will feel toward me, how they'll feel about me, whether they want me, whether they love me or not. And then also just in general, like what's in store for me in this lifetime as it relates to love. And it all cycles back. So we have these various themes. Some of us have I'm not good enough, and other people don't value me,
Yeah.
and I
I'm
can't
not
believe
worthy. Yeah.
my value. And they all have kind of a flavor. But when we're communicating through this belief that we have about other people, we will literally communicate in ways that then generate that outcome.
Hmm. This is really
And
important for people to understand, right?
it's very important because what happens let's just stay with that example. Other people always leave me. Is I'm going to behave certain ways inside of that automatic assumption. That panic is going to come up, and I'm going to start maybe being codependent. And then I'm going to start. This is how this goes. I'm going to start being codependent, which means I'm going to put my first attention on the other person, and always try to be the perfect person for them. And that's going to mean a chronic pattern of self-abandonment.
Hmm.
As the relationship goes on, what ends up happening is I'm not there anymore. I'm occurring like a child because that part of me that is wounded in the I'm alone story, everyone always leaves me, is 10 years old or
Yeah.
7 years old
Yeah.
or even 4 years old. And that's when, we start showing up like a child and we lose our power. And then what happens? Well, the other person kind of drifts away. They do leave because
And
there's
then
no one.
right, no one home, and I've got my story confirmed. See, people leave me.
And then it will occur to me like it just happened again, no matter how hard I try to keep the other person.
Yeah. All right, I got to interrupt this great interview with an announcement from the Relationship School. So, as you know, we have started our 9-month journey together with an amazing tribe of growth development oriented men and women who are finally getting the class they never got. And I'm telling you, this is changing people's lives. So check this out. Here is what one woman said recently about her experience.
Hi, my name's Lori. I invested in Relationship School last year because I had ended a long-term relationship the year before and was out dating and realized I didn't know what I was doing. I knew I didn't know how to have a healthy relationship, but I didn't even know what questions to ask myself. So I found Relationship School. I got enrolled. I started practicing with other classmates the skills that Jayson was laying out for us. I read all the books. It took months of effort of practicing over and over how to listen, practicing how to do conflict, which really means how to still listen even though my heart's pounding and I feel defensive. That's just one example. Relationship school skills have touched all my relationships, whether professional or personal, and I am so grateful to Jayson Gaddis and the Relationship School community for the way that they show up with heart and science. It's a win-win.
All right, Lori got a big result, had some breakthroughs, transformed herself, got more empowered. She talks about how she's a stronger mom these days because of the school. So I think this is an amazing training. We're all filled up. We're on our way, so it's too late to join us. But guess what? I continue to get emails from people who are interested in joining, but they might not want to wait a year. So if that's the case, if you're one of those people, we may have another round starting in early 2018. If you want to get on that bus, then please send us an email and let us know that you're interested. Okay, you can go to relationshipschool.net/DPIR and just leave your email address there because it'll take you to a page where you can say it's like full, but you can get on the wait list for the next one. All right. We'd love to see you there. Okay. Back to Katherine Woodward Thomas. Yeah, I want to rewind just for a minute on a couple parts of your story. So I'm getting so clearly the power of intention, right? This is and let's just hang out there for a minute because that's really what we're talking about here is the power of our thoughts and how we think about ourselves and how we surround ourselves. What do you say to the skeptics who are like, yeah, but that's just sort of some new age, fluffy law of attraction thing that doesn't really work? How do you talk to people like that? Because I'm guessing there's a lot of people that think that way, that are skeptics of the power of intention.
I think it's part of a bigger conversation, which is a choice that each of us needs to make about whether we are going to be victimized in response to something or generative of the solution. And it's a relationship to life. Because when we're talking about living with an intention, we're talking about living in a generative way.
Mm-hmm.
We're just identifying with the story of our past, and we're creating a new story consciously. So when we set an intention, the goal is not to have that intention happen exactly the way we want it.
Yeah.
The goal is to become who we would need to be in order for the intention to manifest, because it's a different identity. We're creating our lives out of our identity all the time.
Right.
And we do it in very covert ways.
Yeah. So we
And
got
we're
to
doing
become this person that we want to be rather than sort of do something. I want you to unpack that a little more. Like, can you say more about become the person we want to be? Because that requires work. Right.
so if someone has an I'm alone false center, which I was talking about latchkey kids before, a lot of us who are latchkey kids have that. We came home to an empty house, we were on our own, no one cared about our day. Our mothers came home exhausted, so there was
Yeah.
no real interaction. So we formed a self sense, I'm alone, other people always leave, dad left. And I can never really get my needs met by anybody. So if we're showing up in relationship inside of that consciousness, we will literally generate that story. So it's almost like you want to say, we're living intentional lives anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Why not be conscious?
Mm-hmm.
Because we are the authors of that. That's why our patterns repeat over and over and over again. We're just retelling a story. Some people will say, well, we're redoing that story because we're trying to heal. I don't think that's true. I think we're redoing the story because we don't know how to do it any differently. We're trapped in
Yeah.
that.
That's
So we have
right.
to wake up out of that story and learn new skills that would prevent someone from leaving. So going back to the example, well, what's the new skill? Well, the new skill might be to be in relationship with someone and to cultivate authenticity and truth telling in a way that's safe, to be able to navigate conflict and differences in an empowered way, in a way that actually builds closeness as opposed to tears it down and
Mm-hmm.
destroys it. It might be to start to be more vulnerable, because a lot of us who have this I'm alone false center, we become very, very, very self-sufficient.
Oh yeah.
The partner that we're with doesn't feel like they can ever find their way in.
Uh-huh.
They're giving, like, yeah, my partner's giving, 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 but I mean, we'll give, but we won't receive necessarily. We
Yeah.
won't let someone contribute to us. So these
Yeah.
are new skills and capacities that we need to grow so that we graduate from the story.
Yeah, that's great. And another example you mentioned from your own personal story that I heard was doing the opposite. So if I'm collapsed and having a hard time standing up for myself, I might push myself to stand up tall that day or in a moment. Is that right?
Yes, you take the opposite action. I mean, it's a deeper process that when I have time to be with people for a longer time, because um, there's intra-development, intrapersonal development, and interpersonal development. So the intrapersonal development is what's the core of me?
Yeah.
What's the inner conversation? What's the consciousness I'm centered in? And then the interpersonal conversation is about, and how am I expressing that? And
Yeah.
how can I do that better? So a lot of the skill building that we're all doing is the interpersonal, and it's very important. However, if we don't know where we're centered in consciousness, we're apt to make a mess of things anyway. So, for
Mm-hmm.
example, if I say to you, I'd like a glass of water too, please. versus, well, I'd like water too,
Mm-hmm.
Almost the same words, but so it's where we're centered
Where we're coming from.
from.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm guessing you guide people through a process to help people come from that centered place.
I do. And, I'm happy to just do kind of a brief one because I don't want to leave people in a mystery. I'd love people to be
Yeah,
able
that'd be
to
great.
practice right away.
Yeah.
So I'll do the one that I usually do with single people, but I'll try and modify it for those of you who are coupled too. How's that?
Okay.
So just inviting everyone to close your eyes for a moment and take a nice deep breath. Just think of kind of the ongoing pattern that comes up for you, either when you're single and you're looking for love and somehow, you don't get chosen again, or you get treated poorly, someone is disrespectful, or they disappear, or, just some kind of ongoing thing that you struggle with. And if you're coupled and in relationship, if you can just look at like the thing that happens over and over where you keep getting snagged and stopped, and ultimately you get like seriously disappointed by your partner over and over again. And just instead of turning away from the feelings that memory evokes, just imagine it happening now and seeing where it lands in your body, where you end up feeling that disappointment. It's usually going to be like in your solar plexus or in your heart. And when you feel it, just put your hand there and just breathe into that center and welcome those feelings in. Just disappointment or frustration or fear, loneliness. And I want to invite you to see if you can just give it a name as an I am, or I am not, I am not. Who is the self in that interaction? It's not your everyday strong self. It's kind of the vulnerable self that you might drop down to when you're disappointed. I am not good enough. I am not safe. I am alone. I'm not wanted. Just seeing if you can give it a name. And see also if there's a corresponding belief there about others, how other people will feel about you in that place. Other people don't care. Other people don't like me. And usually we do it with men or women, whatever gender you're attracted to. So women don't like me. Men always use me. Men like other women, not me. Whatever that story is. Let's see if you can identify it. And also notice what age this part of you is. It's not a rational recognition. It's more like a felt sense, like how old is this part of me? Some of you might feel like you're 5 or 3. You might be 12, but you might also be just a fetus because that feeling is pervasive. And how big is the space that's being held up by that conversation? Just noticing the density and how large that energy is. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes. So this is like the false self. This is the story that gets triggered when we're disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, it's the first step in being able to become conscious. Because then where you want to go from there is, there's 2 conversations that are critical to have. One is inside of this consciousness, how do I show up? Inside of this consciousness, how do I show up in covert ways that literally cause this story to happen? How am I baiting people to mirror back to me that I'm not valuable?
Yeah.
How do I push people away so that, how do I set people up to reject me? It's fascinating when we start to see it. I had one woman I was working with who had a deep, deep, deep feeling of not being wanted her whole life. And we traced it back to when she was in the womb and her mother wanted to abort her. And her mother wrestled and tried to abort her unsuccessfully. And so she came in with this pervasive sense of not being wanted. And
Yeah.
when we look at this issue, like how are you creating evidence of that? One way that we saw it, they're so simple and subtle. She had this way of violating people's body space when she got close to them, like when she got in the same room. She would go
Huh.
up to people and she'd get in their face and talk loud, which of course people are going to step back from her
That's
and
repelling, right?
rejection, right?
Yeah.
So they're very pervasive, these stories. And I think so that's one thing, is to be curious about how you're generating that story. The other thing is to get ourselves outside of the story. Like luckily we're all grown-ups. And
Yeah.
luckily we can imagine ourselves like we had a child who was 3, or we had a little baby in our arms. And we can talk to that child and say, sweetheart, what is really true
Hmm.
that you are all alone in life? First of all, I'm here with you. You're not alone. I'm here.
Yeah.
And second of all, you have the power to create healthier patterns with people. You can learn new skills and you can start to deepen in your relationships in a way that has them thrive.
Mm.
So, you were not born to be alone. You didn't come to this planet to just be by yourself. You came here to love and be loved. And that's the truth.
Yeah.
So we have to wake ourselves up out of the story. And then when we've seen the old ways that have been generating that story, start to do things very, very, very differently.
Yeah.
Take
Yeah.
on
I just want to kind of pause you here. This is so, so important. I want to underline for the listener that looking at the ways that you're creating evidence, I really love that. I just want to we kind of hit repeat, rewind, everybody, like look at the ways that you're building a case or evidence. That was great. Thank you for that.
I mean,
Because then I
this
can
is
get into a personal responsible seat, right? I can be like, oh, I'm doing that versus it's just happening to me.
Oh, exactly. And then we go back to, are we going to be victimized or not? And most of us are walking around pretty victimized. And even if we've grown in consciousness enough to not be victimized by other people, then we're victimized by our own histories and our own consciousness. Well, I'm this way because my mother was that way.
Yeah.
Right. So we have kind of an automatic victimized relationship to life. And I think what we're doing is we're really up leveling to be responsible for our own consciousness, and also the recognition that consciousness is ever evolving. We want to start to identify more with the self of our future than who we were in the past. Because our future is not determined by the past. Our future is determined by what we are standing to create.
I mean, isn't the future determined by our past if we do nothing about it?
Yes, that's what Carl Jung said, that if that which remains unconscious occurs in our lives as fate.
Hmm.
So we're waking up.
Yeah, we wake up, we get in the driver's seat, we start to take responsibility for these patterns so we can do something about it, change the story. So this is all, I'm guessing, Katherine, this is all this beautiful unfolding in terms of calling in the one, right? If I want the one and a great partner, I'm going to need to do this type of work in my interior.
Absolutely. It is. And so it is part of the calling in the one process. I am doing a free call that I know you were kind enough to say you were going to invite people to, where I really chunk out the process on an even deeper level.
Great.
Um,
We'll include
and
that in the show notes, folks.
and it's truthfully, it's part of the conscious uncoupling work, in the sense if we're wrestling with a breakup and trying to graduate from the dynamics of who we were in that relationship, or graduate from old patterns, and we're suffering a heartache, we're kind of in a period where we're broken open, and we can almost see this story in a very crystallized way. So it's also part of the conscious uncoupling process, how we graduate by learning the things that we need to learn from this breakup in a way that has us know that we will never again repeat these patterns.
Mm. Yeah, so powerful. Well, now that you've mentioned it, just so we're clear, the conscious uncoupling, you've said that a couple of times. Just so the listener knows, what is that?
Well, most people have heard of conscious uncoupling because Gwyneth Paltrow and Chris Martin used it to announce their divorce, but they got it from me. And I've been working with people around breakups for years, because it's one of the biggest obstacles to having love. is a poorly navigated breakup in the past,
Oh,
where we're kind of left a little handicapped, a little defended, a little shut down, a little unwilling to be so open-hearted in the future. And also where we make false meaning of the breakup.
mm-hmm.
Enough, it kind of validates that source fracture story. We call it source fracture story in the conscious uncoupling work. So it's a way to, I mean, obviously in our community, we're pro-marriage, we're pro-love, we're not pro-breakup, but we're not pro-misery. And
Yeah.
we're not cruelty at the end of a relationship. So we want us all to, I mean, the truth is that, it's almost easy to be loving in the beginning of a relationship. It's when a relationship is ending and you have felt disappointed and let
Hurt.
down, afraid, hurt, all that stuff, to
Yeah.
still be kind, to make the choice for kindness, to create cohesion for your kids. Like, all those choices are exceptionally loving choices.
Yeah.
They stretch us almost more than anything else will ever do.
Yeah. I'm thinking about your term from earlier about, like, in order to do that, to be like kind on the way out and respectful and courteous and caring and appreciative, I'm going to have to find something inside of myself to get there. Right.
Yeah, that's that intrapersonal development that I love so much. I would say truthfully that most of my work is that inner development.
Yeah.
A lot of what we're talking about is where are you centered in consciousness? What's motivating you to behave in that way?
Yeah, totally.
Very
People come to
self-aware.
the relationship school thinking they're going to learn this external thing. And what they find is it's a lot of work on the interior. So I'm with you. It's a big
Yeah.
deal. It's so important.
But this process also, I'm going to be at Esalen in October this year doing this with people. It's for 5 days. So I
Oh,
just want to give
nice.
you, I gave you like the 5-minute version, but
Yeah.
it's something that can actually go very, very, very deep for
Oh,
people and can
I'm sure.
do deep transformation.
Yeah. What's like another baby step if I'm feeling hurt, if we're talking about conscious uncoupling, for example, and I'm feeling really hurt and I'm just like in it. What's a baby step I can make in the direction of what you're talking about to finally look towards this person with kindness when I'm feeling so hurt and I just feel like all I want to do is protect myself.
Yeah, that's great. I love how you just named that. I will tell you that I've been studying secure attachment.
Yeah.
And one of the habits of people who have very healthy, secure attachments versus those of us who have insecure patterns and even love avoidant patterns is just what you said, that in the moment where you feel hurt, people with secure attachment will reach out to connect, to
Hmm.
clear things up, as opposed to someone with insecure or love avoidant patterns will retreat from the relationship and put self-protection above relatedness.
Yeah.
But but when even telling you that, like, the internal skills that one needs in that moment is to take a deep breath, to see where that disappointment is being held in your body, that hurt feeling is held in your body, and to ask yourself, what's the meaning I'm making
Mm.
of what just happened? And it's
They're
gonna,
bad. I'm bad. It's all
I'm
bad.
bad, I'm bad, no one loves me, no one ever cares about me.
Hmm.
There's some story. And it's the willingness to say, I don't know that that story is true.
Yeah. So we also feel like you're asking us too to feel, okay, where is this located in my body? I'm going to feel this. And then it sounds like I'm going to start to investigate maybe where's the evidence that I'm finding for the story to be true.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're chunking it like that, Jayson, because I don't want anyone to skip over the feelings.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm going to negate that. Is that really true?
Yeah.
It is like an inner holding. You say, you can even talk to yourself. I know you're hurt right now, sweetheart. I'm just not sure that the way you're interpreting this is accurate. So we
Hmm.
need to do some research.
I love that. Let's do some research there, little boy, little girl. Yeah. Let mommy and daddy go do some
I mean,
homework.
can you imagine, like, we're going to each other and we're saying, okay, I'm feeling a bit hurt and I'm noticing that I'm making it mean that you don't actually care about me.
Yeah.
I thought I would check that out with you.
I mean, revolutionary, right? Yeah. Well, I love the research because that really is, you got to get the front part of your brain online to be able to do a little bit of research there, right?
Yeah, well,
'Cause
luckily nature has developed that part of our brain, so let's use it.
yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Evolution is.
awesome. And so you said something about I've made negative meaning out of it, or quote, negative meaning. It's about me. It's because I'm flawed in some way. They left me. I'm still hurt. So I identify that. And then I'm guessing you start to go do your research, right? And you realize, oh, I'm really just fused to my belief here that this is all about me, but maybe there's another possibility. What's another next step that I can take?
Well, I think this is about shifting where, how do I say this? It's shifting where we're identified. So a lot of us, even though we're adults, we're still kind of overly identified with the wounded self, with the childhood story.
Mm-hmm.
And we get taken out by our emotions. If I
Mm-hmm.
feel it, it must be true. I think that's maybe, I hate to be sexist, maybe I should just leave gender out of it, but I think we women have a harder time with it, actually.
Okay.
We tend to be more identified with our emotions than men.
Mm-hmm.
But I think also then maybe, if I think it, it must be true. So we want to start to disidentify with the feelings and the thoughts that are coming from that other center, from that wounded self center, that younger self. And what we want to do is to start to wake ourselves up. Well, what's really true? So what's really true? I came here to love and be loved. I'm actually, it's my destiny to have rich, happy, healthy relationships. I'm committed to that. I have access to the teachers that I need, to the books that I need to read, the podcasts I need to listen to, like
Yeah.
learn things everywhere. Life is supporting me to come into the fullness of who I am as an adult. So we need to hold that child self and not be overly identified with that story, and begin to identify with our power and our goodness and our worthiness.
Yeah.
And begin to feel that as the deeper truth of who we are, and live more congruently from that center, and do our relationships from that center.
Oh yeah, beautiful. And if let's say I'm having a really hard time, or you working with someone who's having a really hard time, they just can't they're like, that's all going over their head. They're like, yeah, but I got hurt and it's all really bad. And is this a person who's just not quite ready to let go and
Well, I
ready
think
yet?
I think when we're shifting consciousness, it's heavy lifting, and I think it's hard to do alone. And I think this is why, and it's even hard if you're just, in therapy once a week, which is why I've been creating learning communities, because we're all in this conversation together, and you can, hear people sharing about they're
Mm-hmm.
going through this, and we see ourselves in each other, and I think that we can fly further and faster together, to use that
I'm so
metaphor.
with you.
Yeah. So that's why we're here together with your community,
Mm-hmm.
and we know that we're all working together. And I think there's strength in the collective field. We are evolving consciousness. These structures in consciousness are emergent. Our capacity to even notice what we're centered in is an emergent capacity. Nobody was talking about that 20 years ago. We were at a different place in our development.
Mm-hmm.
So we're kind of pioneering these skills and capacities. It is heavy lifting. It's hard to do on your own. So I would encourage people to, get an evolutionary partner. Come, you're in Jayson's community, come join my community, find the teachers that you resonate with, and just stay close. We need to do this together.
Yeah. Awesome. As we wind down here, I have two questions about the victim consciousness for you before we part ways here. One is more meta kind of, and then I want to make it personal. So the meta question around victimhood, what's if you had just one piece of advice in how we humans relate to the victim out there who's really stuck. They're really stuck in their victim seat, and they're really identified with everybody's out to get me, or that person's out to get me, and they're just having a hard time kind of even having this conversation we're having here. What's one action that we can take toward that person? Because it can be really easy to start to even get annoyed with the victim here. Is there anything you recommend that we can do to help this person?
I will tell you that there are many of us who have a more fragile personality.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very hard for us to take personal responsibility.
Yeah,
So
I'm with you.
it's kind of, I think, the entrance for any life where one grows and develops is this capacity for personal responsibility. So we all have people like this in our lives, in our families, in
Mm-hmm.
our long-term friendships, in our communities. I think it's to really be honest by saying, look, I really love you and I value you. And it hurts my heart that you're suffering so much. I personally have been doing a lot of work to let go of victimization. It's been really helping me to take personal responsibility. I'd love to have those conversations with you because I think it would really feed you power to get beyond this. Are you open to that? So you ask
Mm-hmm.
permission.
Yeah, great.
You ask permission. And I think, and if the person says, no, I'm not up for that, then you say, okay, so you're just wanting me to kind of hold your complaint and to maybe just let you know I love you. And they'll say, yeah, I just want to be heard. And then you can put a limit on it. You can say, okay, well, my capacity for doing that is probably 3 minutes, not 15.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I can give you 3 minutes to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you ever want to have a deeper conversation about the other, I'm right here for you.
Yeah, great. Wonderful advice for us. And then on the personal side, when you and when you, if you do, get triggered by something in life and you go to that place, what's your go-to move?
Oh, let's see for a moment.
Whether it's
Um,
politics, the earth, someone's being really inappropriate. There's, some where you feel scared or hurt in some way. Maybe it's your husband, I don't know, but
you know what you do? You know what I do? I have a practice of writing in my journal. And it's kind of like Julia Cameron's morning pages, but I've added a
oh, yeah.
piece to it. So when often I'll wake up in kind of a swirl, or if I get triggered by something, and I'll sit down and I'll just kind of dump it out, like just get it out on the page. But I'll end the letter. It'll be like a dear God letter, because I'm just writing to the universe. But I'll end the letter and I'll say, please write back through my pen. Thank you. And then I write a dear Katherine letter from my higher self that gives me a deeper perspective. And it helps me to integrate all of these things that we're talking about today, like what's really true about me and how
Yeah.
I might have participated in that and what I could do that's generative, because I don't want to be victimized by the bad behavior of other people, which we all know that we all are all the
Sure.
time. Like,
Sure.
people behave badly. So how do we stay in a generative, empowered relationship with that? So I use my own higher self to
Mm.
counsel me, and it helps.
I love that. I'm so glad I asked. Thank you for that nugget.
Um,
Cool. So, Katherine, it's been a real treat here. I have one more, actually, I lied, one more question for you. I always ask my guests this now. So I'm building this relationship school, virtual relationship school mostly. And I'm on a mission to teach young people how to do romantic relationships particularly well, because so many adults, we flounder later in life and it's not taught in school. So if you were to give me advice on what you think is the most important thing I should teach to teens and young adults, what do you think that is?
Well, I'm going to say something that probably most people don't say, and I think it's the making of amends really well.
Hmm.
Because I think we all know that when we do something that's hurtful to people, like, we should apologize. And sometimes it'll come out like, okay, well, I said I'm sorry.
Yeah. What's your problem?
Exactly. So there's this component to clearing the field with people, which is really about being able to mirror back the impact that your unconscious behavior had on them. Like, okay, I got it. It made you feel really bad about yourself when I said that. I can completely get that, and I'm so sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's about making an amends, and the amends might be simple, like, I promise, sweetie, I'll be more conscious of that in the future. I won't do that. I'll do
Mm.
my best to not do that. Sometimes we lose relationships because we've made mistakes. So then the amends would be on there. I'm going to really do my best to not do that again to someone in the future. Or, it's just some version of, I'll be responsible for making it better from here. And that actually restores trust to the field between two people.
Absolutely. Cool. I'm writing this one down. Great. Making amends, huge. That's so key, the repair, right? How do we come back and make amends? Thanks for that. I'll take that with me on my journey.
Great.
Um,
Thank
yeah. So where do people find you, and where can they find out about this free class you're doing and your books and everything else?
www.katherinewoodwardthomas.com. And there is a free call in our community on September 20th, and then we're going to do it again on the 23rd, and we'd love to have people there. If they could sign up, we'll send them the recording of the call, but it's going to be a free seminar for calling in the run.
Okay, cool. And if we go to your website, is it obvious where to sign up, or is there a special link?
I think it's the top banner on the site right now.
All right.
So,
Great.
yeah.
We'll make sure we include that. Cool. Well, it's been such a treat. Thank you so much for your just beautiful wisdom here and sharing so generously with us.
Thank you for having me. I really, it's been a delight to be with you, Jayson. I love what you're up to.
Cool. Thanks, Katherine. All right. Take care.
Bye.
All right. Pretty rich interview, yeah? KatherineWoodwardThomas.com. Go check it out. Sign up for her free event. Read her books. Seems like really valuable information. If it's anything close to what we just talked about, obviously you're going to get a ton of value by checking her stuff out and following up, okay? Now, practical action step based on what she shared here that I would suggest is this whole thing around intention. What are you putting out there, right? Really see if you can start to disidentify with this, what she called the false self, right? Or your smaller self. And instead living into this future self through the power of intention. So if it feels a little woo-woo or kind of out there for you, well, try it and see what happens from your own experience, all right? I know for me in my life, intention is huge with goal setting especially. So zero in, write down your intention that you want in a relationship. What kind of partner do you want if you're single? If you're already partnered, what kind of relationship do you want to live into? And make it crystal clear. Write it down. And then you might make another list of what's in the way of getting that. And then that's where your work is, right? Okay, simple action step for you to take this further. Awesome. All right, guys, thanks so much for joining us here, as always, at the Smart Couple Podcast. If you haven't left us a review, I'm going to ask you every episode probably to do that. I want to plant that seed that please leave us a review, okay? It helps us with the reach, and it helps us with our credibility, and it just looks cool on iTunes to have a bunch of stars and reviews. So I would love to get to 1,000 reviews. My next benchmark is 500, and then these are positive reviews, 500 and then 1,000. So will you help me get there? All you have to do is go to jasongaddis.com/podcast review to leave us a review. Okay, that's our old instructions. You can do it right from your phone. Otherwise, you can do it from your desktop through iTunes. And, you know, it actually is better than a thank you email directly to us, is just leave us a review, and then it sits there for other people to see. And it means a lot to us. So jasongaddis.com/podcast review if you want the instructions on how to do that from your phone. All right. Okay. Thanks so much. Here's to learning the class and the skills that you never got in your traditional formal education. And here's to ongoing work here at the Smart Couple Podcast and the Relationships School. And one more reminder that the Smart Couple book is going to rock your world, and it's coming out in late November. So planting that seed now, this is good stuff. It's going to hit you right between the eyes, as it should. Okay. Thanks, guys.